common factor. So we're going to be factoring today. Now understand, factoring for the next few days is biggest thing that you could learn this year. Honestly, you will use it every single day almost till the end of the year, starting today, tomorrow. Factoring is just a huge thing. It's a huge thing in secondary math 3. Now luckily, once you guys leave my class, you'll be factoring junkies. You will be good at factoring. That's one thing that my students always have a strength in, is factoring. And it's just a huge thing in math. So once again, we're factoring out the GCF, which means greatest common factor. So what we're going to be doing is asking ourselves, what does each term have in common? So looking here, remember terms are separated by plus or minus signs. So we have two terms here, right? Yes. And in those two terms, what's in common? A 9. So we would factor it out. We would pull it out. And I'll get to some examples in a second. All right, and then also, we're not only going to say what's in common, but what's the greatest thing in common. So look at these two terms down here. 9x plus 9x squared. There's two terms. What's the greatest thing in common? There's a 9 in common, but what else? And an x in common. So we would factor out, we'd pull it out, a 9x, and then we would write what's left inside the parentheses. And we're about to do our first example. Now understand something. When we factor something out, it's the exact opposite of taking something and multiplying it together. So if you have these things that are spread apart and you multiply them together, peeling them back apart is factoring. So we're just going backwards of multiplication. Yeah?
Why are we taking them apart?
Because we will get to why, we'll actually apply it in 2 more lessons. And then you'll know why. It's to find the zeros of a function, to solve it, and you can solve by factoring. So, good question. All right, let's just start my example. Pay very close attention today, you guys. All right, so 9 heart plus 8. There is 2 terms in this, 8 heart plus 8. There are 2 terms in this binomial. What's in common?
8.
So we're pulling out an 8. Now when I say we pulled it out, what we technically did was we divided it out. So we were not able to pull out everything. So what we did though was we pulled out an 8, meaning we divided out an 8 out of each term. So we're going to put a parentheses and write what's left in each term. So let's look here. 8 heart divided by 8. The 8's divided out, what's left?
Heart.
So in the first term, there was a heart left. Very good. Now we have positive 8 divided by 8. What does that divide to be? 1. So we had a plus 1 left. And we're done. We factored this. Now understand, you can check your answers. If you multiply it back together, you should end up back to where you were before you factored. 8 times heart is 8 heart. 8 times 1 is 8. Do you see how I can check my answers?
Oh, okay.
All right, let's do another one. So we have 3 minus 3x squared. Now guys, it's not a choice. If you cannot factor, you will not pass this class. So I'm telling you right now, if you want to pass the class, you have to be able to factor. If you want to pass the second half of the year, you have to be able to factor. This is not one of those topics that you can say, So just so you all understand. All right, so looking at these 2 things, what's in common?
3.
A 3. So we're pulling out a 3. Now when we pulled it out, what we technically did was divided it out. So go back through, divide each term by what you pull out. So let's write what's left. 3 divided by 3.
1.
In our first term, there's a 1 left. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
Negative 3x squared divided by 3. What's negative 3 divided by 3? Negative 1, right? And then left is a x squared. So don't we just have minus x squared left?
Yeah.
And we're done. Now here's a way you can check to make sure you factored out enough. The hardest part is figuring out exactly what do I factor out. So look back inside your parentheses here. So that was our answer. Was there anything more we could have pulled out in heart plus 1? No. Is there anything more we could pull out in 1 minus x squared? Nothing more in common, right? So we can know we've factored out everything in common. All right, any questions on that? Let's do another one. 3x minus 6, what's my greatest common factor? Does this one have a 6?
No.
Nope, not quite. You're on the right track.
There.
2.
Does 3 divide by 2? It does? No, it doesn't.
All 3.
Good. We're going to pull out a 3. Don't they both divide by 3? Okay, so we're pulling out a 3. Now, once again, go back through, divide each term by what you pulled out. So let's see what's left in the first term. 3 over 3 is gone. Left is a, so x. Very good. Negative 6 divided by 3.
2.
Good. Negative 2, right? So you have to do -2. Very good. You're awesome.
Oh.
Very good. Questions on that? We're going to get a little bit harder and a little bit harder here.
Oh.
All right, 3x squared minus 6x. What's the greatest thing in common?
3.
Okay, there is a 3 in common. What else?
X squared.
Can you pull out an x squared? Does this one have an x squared?
No.
Nope, but you're on the right track. What do we pull out?
X.
X, awesome. So in this one, we're pulling out a 3 and an x. Does everybody see how each term has a 3 and an x? So now to write what's left inside, if you need to go back through and divide each thing by 3x, that's what you're doing when you factored it out. So let's go through this in pieces. 3 over 3 is 1. X squared divided by x. That's x to the first. 2 minus 1 is
X.
x. X to the first, right? Which is just x. Very good. And then what's negative 6 divided by 3?
2.
Is it positive or negative?
Negative 2.
Good, negative 2. And then what's x divided by x? No. What's x divided by x? 1. So 2 times 1 is just 2, right? So we don't write the 1. Are we all good?
Yes.
Let's look back inside. Did we factor out everything? Yes, there's nothing more in common. Nothing more in common, so we're good. Any questions so far? A little bit harder. A little bit harder. Here we go. You're doing great. 2x squared plus 4x minus 6. Now, one of the common errors is people say, oh, well, I could pull out an x. But it has to be in all the terms. So 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. Is there an x in every term?
Yeah.
Nope, so we can't pull out an x. Does everybody understand?
Yeah.
Yep, there's an x in these two, but not all 3.
Can you pull out 2?
Good, let's pull out a 2. All right, let's divide each term by 2, because that's what we factored out, and see what's left. 2 over 2 is gone. X squared's left. Positive 4 divided by 2 is 2, and it's positive 2, so positive 2, and then don't forget that that x was there, right? And then negative 6 divided by 2, negative 3. And then look inside. Was there anything more we could have pulled out? Nope, so we're done. Okay, a little bit harder. This one's probably, oh no, this one's still not too bad. 25, but pay close attention. 25x cubed plus 5x squared. What's the greatest thing in common?
5x.
5x, isn't it?
So if we pull out 5x, let's think about it. Okay, let's go with 5x just to show you guys something. So let's go with 5x. Let's see what happens. So just this will be a good point to make. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Very good. X cubed divided by x is x squared. You're right. And then we have plus, what's 5x squared? Wait, 5 divided by 5 is 1. And then x squared divided by x is just x. Now look inside our parentheses. Was there something more in common?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Look, there's x's. There shouldn't be anything more in common. So we didn't factor out the greatest common factor. So I'm going to go back. Shouldn't we have pulled out another x?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we have pulled out another x?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back and say, okay, no. I'm going to pull out 5x squared instead, because that's greater. So 5x squared. There we go.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Why do you have 5x squared? Because that's a x cubed instead of a square.
Because x cubed is at least x squared. It's x squared with an x, right? So you're pulling out the greatest thing. So this one has an x squared. Doesn't this one at least have an x squared? Okay, so let's factor out 5x squared.
This might be dumb, but does it matter? Can you do either of the sides when you're pulling out?
Yeah, you can, but they'll always write it in front.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's divide by 5x squared. So that's still 5. What's x cubed divided by x squared?
X to the first.
X to the first, so x. Very good. What's 5x squared divided by 5x squared? It doesn't go away. What is it? 1. So plus 1, right? Everybody?
Yeah.
And we're done. Now look, isn't that better? There wasn't anything left inside that was the same. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Very good. Couple more. Stay with me. If you work hard, you will get done in class. So let's just keep going. 10x minus 5x squared plus 25x cubed. What's my thing in common?
5x squared.
Can we pull out an x squared out of x?
5x.
Good. Only a 5x, right, everybody? So then divide each thing by 5x and write what's left inside.
So everything, like if you have an x cubed and x3, you go with the smallest x?
Yeah, you go with the smallest. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. 10 divided by 5. 2. X divided by x is gone, right? Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. X squared divided by x. Good. So negative 1x, and I would probably just write negative x, but I'll change that in a second. 25 divided by 5 is positive 5. X cubed divided by x. X squared. I'm going to write it prettier. So 5x, and then we have 2 minus x. Instead of minus 1x, I'm going to write minus x plus 5x squared. Okay, questions? Okay, we're getting there. Stay with me. This is probably the hardest one. 35b to the 4th minus 42b squared. What's in common? Good. You're absolutely right. Was that you that said 7? Good, Connor. You're absolutely right. 35 and 42 have a common factor. It's 7. We'll pull out a 7. What else?
B squared.
B squared, because they both divide by 7. Right? Does that make sense? 35 divided by 7 works, right? 42 divided by 7 works. Then we can check it. Once we factor it, we can check and make sure that's the greatest thing. So we pull out of b squared, 7b squared. So divide each thing by 7b squared. Divide by 7b squared. Okay, 35 divided by 7. 5. What's b to the 4th divided by b squared?
3 squared.
Good. Negative 42 divided by 7.
Negative 6.
Negative 6, and then b squared divided by b squared is a 1, right?
Yeah.
So then look inside, Brian. Was there something more we could have pulled out? No, so we did the right thing here, right? Does that make sense, everybody? Now let's say you weren't sure. You can list out factors of 35. You could list out factors of 35, list out factors of 42, and then compare and see which one's the greatest. Does that make sense? Like, oh, it has an 8 and an 8. These two have 8s. Does that make sense? Do you need to list them out individually? What? Okay, next thing. This is the most important part. Everybody listen very carefully. Tell me, in negative 20x plus 5, these are my last 2 examples, so stay with me, they're important. What's in common?
Nothing.
Right, this one has a 5 in common. Now notice something. We have a negative in the front, right?
Yes.
Now anytime you have a negative in the front, now notice before, we didn't have a negative in front, 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 no negative in front, no negative in front. But if you do have a negative in front, you need to factor out the negative with your factor. So you said there's a 5 in common. Because of the negative in front, we're going to factor out negative 5. So divide each thing by what you factored out.
So no matter what, there's negative in front, the bottom is going to be a negative for whatever it is.
You're going to pull out your factor with a negative. Yep. So now be very careful here. So with your signs on this next part, it's you have to be careful. Negative 20 divided by negative 5.
Positive 4.
Positive 4, and then there's an x left, right?
Yep.
What's positive 5 divided by negative 5?
Negative 1.
Negative 1, and we're done.
Boom.
We're getting there. Okay. Next one. Negative 5x squared minus 20x. What are we going to pull out?
Negative.
Good. There's a 5x in common, and because of the negative in front, we pull out a negative with it. So we're pulling out negative 5x.
Square.
So divide each thing by negative 5x. Now careful on this one. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. X squared divided by x is?
X squared. X.
X. Negative 20 divided by negative 5.
Positive.
Positive 4. And then x divided by x is a? Okay, actually these are my last 2 examples. You need them. Okay. Negative 7 minus 49x to the 5th. What's in common? A 7. And is there a negative in front?
Yes.
So we need to factor out a negative 7. Divide each thing by what you factored out. Negative 7 divided by negative 7.
1.
Positive 1. Negative 49 divided by negative 7. Good. Positive 7. X to the 5th, no x's, right?
Yeah.
And we're almost there.
Dude, this is pretty easy.
X squared.
Alex can do it. I can do it.
Which one is this?
These are all better times.
What do you think? What do you see in common?
X squared.
6.
6.
Oh, just kidding.
So can we pull out any x's?
Oh.
No, because this 6 doesn't have an x. But let's
Oh,
do.
yeah.
What if we pull out a 2? Is that enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all divide by 2, but is that enough? Is there something greater?
6.
Greater.
Good.
6.
Do they all divide by 3?
No, or yeah, but
Yeah, but 6 is the greatest, so we need to pull out the greatest thing. So they all divide by 6. Good, Alex.
see if I can get the job at a fast, because I'm stupid.
12 divided by 6. 2x squared, right?
He gets it.
Negative 18 divided by 6. Negative 3x cubed. And then 6 divided by 6 doesn't become nothing. It is
1.
1. Good. Plus 1. Most common error. And holy cow, I'll tell you what, secondary 3 students, they come into my class and they can't factor, but not if they've had me, because you'll be able to factor. All right, any questions? Do you all feel comfortable with factoring out GCFs?
Yeah, so far.
Okay, ready, set, do 23 through 30, which is really just the first few problems. Ready, set, go. What if you don't pay attention, okay? So everybody, do not do something weird on these ones. Now read the instructions. It doesn't say multiply. I know you can multiply this out. That's not what I want you to do. You're making it way harder on yourself. Do not multiply. It simply says factor out the GCF. Factor out the greatest common factor. So just like before, we got to look at both terms, or 3 terms, or however many terms, and see what we have in common. There's a term, there's a term. Aren't terms separated by plus and minus signs?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you see my 2 terms? In those 2 terms, it should reach out and slap you in the face. What's in common?
X and 2.
X minus 2.
X minus 2 is in common. Does everybody see how in each term there's the exact looking thing? An X minus 2. So we factor it out, meaning we pull it out. So when we pulled it out, we divided it out, right?
Yes, so it's gone.
So left, right here is a
3.
3, and then minus
X.
minus X. And we're done.
So now you don't have to remultiply it?
No, because multiplying is the opposite of factoring. Now we factored. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that would
Okay.
be after you multiplied that? That's 3
No,
X minus
no,
2.
no. We can multiply back together. If we factor it back, we get back here.
I know, I'm saying, but
Never cheated.
like that one would be.
If we multiply this out and combine like terms, and we multiply this out and combine like terms, they'd be equal.
Wait,
Yep. Let's do this one.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, since it goes out to there, back down,
$20.
why, like, would it go back to that?
We wouldn't. We're done.
I know, but like,
Oh.
you multiply this, it would go back to that?
No, if we multiply it back together, it would be the simplified version of this.
Oh,
And then we haven't learned yet. We'll learn in 2 days how to factor a quadratic, because this is actually quadratic. Okay, guys, stay with me. Look at these next 2 terms. What's in common?
X minus.
X plus 1.
X plus 1. So we factor out an X plus 1. When we factored it out, technically we divided it out. So what was left in my first term?
X minus 5.
And then left was minus 5. And we're done factoring. Any questions?
I think I got it.
Okay. Do we need to do, this should be plus. Okay, should we do one couple more?
No more.
What's in common in this term and this term?
It should be 2x plus 3.
Very good. We have a 2x plus 3 in common. So when we factor it out, we divided it out. So left was 14x and then minus 3. Is everybody seeing it?
Yes. So
14x and then minus 3. One more?
this, yes.
Okay. X times 4x minus 1 minus 5 times 4x minus 1. What's in common?
4x minus 1.
4x minus 1. So we divided it out. What's left in this term?
X minus 5.
X, what's left in this term? Minus 5. And we're done. Okay guys, do 31 through 34. Number 15. So if you've already done it, awesome. Check your answers. So on number 15, this time we're not asked to factor. We're asked to find the product. So it's the exact opposite of factoring. We're multiplying these 2 things together. So we know we've got to double distribute because there's 2 terms and 2 terms. X times 4, 4x squared. X times negative 7, negative 7x. Does everybody understand how I distributed x through? I'm going to distribute positive 6 through. Positive 6 times 4x is positive 24x's. And then positive 6 times negative 7, negative 42. From there, we need to put it in standard form and combine all like terms. 4x squared, no other x squareds. Negative 7x plus 24x is positive 17x's minus 42. It's in standard form, meaning the highest degree to the lowest degree. Okay, I'm going to do number 17 with you. 7v plus 1 times 6v minus 3. Once again, we're multiplying these things, so we're going to distribute. 6v times 7v is 42v squared. 7v times negative 3 is negative 21 v's. Positive 1 times positive 6v's is positive 6v's. Positive 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. So then from there, we're going to combine all like terms. 42v squared, we know we can't combine those with our v's. Negative 21v's plus 6v's is negative 15v's. And then minus 3. Okay, so we all know how to find products. We've been doing this from day 1. So finish the worksheet. It's due at the end of the hour.
15 is X.
Finish the worksheet.
Will you help me out 15?
I've got.
Huh?
Will you help me out 15?